All right, Republican reaction to President Obama. I hope you're sitting for this. It turns out they didn't love his speech. They push him into this speech. You better be tough. You're weak. You're leading from behind. You're the worst. You need to attack them. Okay, great. Now that's exactly what he said in the speech. Are you happy? Well, let's find out. Let's go to Ted Cruz.
Well, I thought the remarks tonight continued the president's approach to this crisis, which is that they were fundamentally unserious. If you look at the first portion of the president's remarks tonight, they were devoted to a defense of the failed Obama-Clinton foreign policy, of the policy that has featured the United States leading from behind, as he put it, and has led to most of the world being on fire. And what we didn't see tonight was a commander-in-chief focused on U.S. national security interest who stood up and said there are radical Islamic terrorists who have declared war on the United States, who are murdering Christians, who have murdered 2 American journalists, and who have promised to take jihad to America, and we will respond with overwhelming air force to take them out.
No, that's almost exactly what he said in the speech. But it doesn't matter. He could have taken what Ted Cruz just said on Fox News and said it word for word, and Ted Cruz still would have come out and said, not serious. We need more bombings, not enough. I hate this president. If you want to talk about not serious, Ted Cruz isn't serious, man. There's no bigger political slime ball in the country than Ted Cruz. Now watch the rest of this smarminess.
Well, he suggested that his approach was going to be similar to Yemen and Somalia. That does not prompt confidence, because in Yemen and Somalia, our approach has been altogether ineffective, and both are hotbeds of terrorism. Our approach has not worked in Yemen and Somalia.
Look, we did decapitation strikes in Somalia and Yemen. We got some of the top terrorists of those particular organizations. Now, as a progressive, I don't think that's that smart, because once we hit wrong people, as we do all the time in Yemen in particular, we turn the local population against us. So I would argue for less drone strikes in those areas. Now, what does Cruz argue for? He doesn't argue for less drone strikes. He argues for more. So that would turn the population against us even more. What else do you want us to do in Yemen and Somalia? You want us to invade? No, this is empty criticism. And whatever Obama does, he does wrong. I think President Obama's speech last night was not a good one. I think it's a bad policy. I outline it because of what it's going to get into and be counterproductive. But Ted Cruz wants to go in the opposite direction. More war. Somalia, Yemen, Syria, Iraq. I can't get enough war, but it doesn't really matter. Tomorrow I'll tell you I don't want war, and I'll blame Obama on it. The only thing Ted Cruz believes is how wrong Obama is on 100% of the issues. But not just Obama. Now watch this political trick he does. Listen.
The Obama-Clinton foreign policy has been characterized by photo op foreign policy.
I want to ask you why you keep calling it the Obama-Clinton policy. I assume you're referring to Hillary Clinton, but in her defense, Senator, she, along with our then Defense Secretary Leon Panetta and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs Dempsey, were pushing President Obama to arm those Syrian opposition rebels years ago, and the president declined to do it.
The reason I call it the Obama-Clinton foreign policy is that they are intertwined. She was his Secretary of State. She was in charge with implementing the strategy of, quote, leading from behind, which in effect featured the United States withdrawing from leadership in the world, and it created a vacuum into which these players have stepped.
Why don't you just be honest with people for the first time in your life and say, look, I plan to run for president in 2016, even though, by the way, I wasn't born in this country. And I'm going to likely run against Hillary Clinton if I make it out of the Republican primary. So I want to smear her with what I'm trying to paint as failed Obama policy. But he's never going to say that. Oh, yeah, Obama, Clinton, Obama, Clinton, Obama, Clinton. He's not the only one. I'm going to give you more examples in a second. But let's focus one last substantive thing here, okay? They keep saying, Obama didn't listen to people like Hillary Clinton. That's what Megyn Kelly was saying, who told him to aid the rebels in Syria. That's what McCain says. We should have aided the rebels in Syria. The biggest rebels in Syria were ISIS. Now, in hindsight, they all say, oh, no, we would have aided the right rebels. At the time, did you know who the right rebels were? No. Would you have, in all likelihood, given weapons to ISIS? Yes. You should be applauding Obama for not giving weapons to ISIS. And could you imagine if he had made the mistake of listening to them at that point? If he had just given indiscriminate weapons to the rebels like John McCain wanted, most of the Republican Party wanted, guaranteed some of those weapons would have gone to ISIS. Now they've turned around, he weaponized ISIS. Now they have the temerity to turn around and say he didn't give weapons to ISIS. That's why he's not fighting ISIS enough. See, these guys are fundamentally dishonest. There's legitimate criticism of the president, and this ain't it. Now, Marco Rubio is going to come in. He's another Republican thinking that he's going to run for president in 2016 and thinking that he's going to run against Hillary Clinton. Let's see if we can see a familiar talking point here.
The reason why the president's foreign policy failed is because the Obama-Clinton foreign policy is built on neo-isolationism, on the belief that American engagement is what's causing all these problems, that it's our fault that these problems are happening in the Middle East because we're too involved. So if we pull out, things will get better. That's what his whole foreign policy has been built on. And there are even people in my own party that somehow believe that as well. And it's created tremendous problems. And now here's the proof of that.
The Obama-Clinton policy. Gee, I wonder if the Republicans have a new talking point. And our whole problem was that we pulled out of the Middle East. We opened up Pandora's box. And we're like, oh, Sunni rebels and militia, Shiite militia, go ahead and decapitate everybody. You see, the problem was that we pulled out of the Middle East. No, the problem is that we went into the Middle East. All right, one last one from Rubio. These are all such honest guys with legitimate criticism of the president.
The second point I would make is one of the things you didn't hear the president say last night is we will do whatever it takes to defeat ISIL. And I'll tell you why that's important. Because while I do believe that the ideal way to defeat them is the combination of U.S. air power and local forces on the ground, Iraqis and moderate Sunnis and Syria and Kurds, it may not work. And if it doesn't, does that mean then that we're going to allow ISIL to exist, that we're going to try the best we can, but if it doesn't work out, they get to stay? I'm concerned about that because the president didn't say last night that it would, no matter what, we're going to do whatever it takes to win.
Okay, so let's review what he just said. He said he actually agrees with the president that the best strategy is bombings and support on the ground for our allies. But he's got to criticize them anyway. But he didn't say that he would destroy ISIL no matter what. Actually, he did say that. He also said that in the speech. So you just made that part up. And then the third part is he implies, well, what if our current strategy, the one I agree actually 100% with President Obama, even though I'm on here criticizing him as if I disagree with him, okay? What if that doesn't work? He didn't say he would nuke the entire Middle East. Not doing enough. Well, what else would you do, Marco Rubio? What else would you do? You tell me. Okay, let's say that strategy doesn't work. Would you put in 100,000 American troops? Say it, put it on the record. Would you put in 200,000 American troops? Would you use nuclear weapons? What would you do, Marco Rubio? Go ahead, put yourself on the record. Oh, you're not gonna do that, because all you ever do is criticize. You don't say what you're actually gonna do, so you could turn around and say Obama's wrong now and Obama's wrong later. I'm sorry, the Obama-Clinton policy. Frauds, every single one of them.